Greetings. My name's Eugene Dean, and today I'm your host in Beyond the Pandemic Community Conversations. Today, we are pleased to have with us Jamel Hardtman. Greetings, Jamel.
Greetings, brother Eugene. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great. We're kind of doing a role reversal. In
Yes,
the
yes.
past, I've been the guest on your show, and
Yep.
so it's a pleasure to have you as a guest today on Beyond the Pandemic Community Conversations. You know what I mean? So
Great.
yeah, this is great. So we want to talk a little bit about on this show. We're talking about the social impact. There's been a lot of conversation about health. You know what I mean?
And
And what we recognize is that there hasn't been a whole lot of conversation around the economic impact and the social impact. So this show we want to focus on that. So
yeah.
tell us a bit about what your experience has been with the pandemic over the past 18 months. Like, how has it impacted you, your family, your business, things of that nature?
Interestingly enough, I remember when it was January of 2020, right? And
Mhm.
a lot of noise was being made, and it was you were watching the news, and my colleague, my other colleague and I were joking about her and her husband because she kept saying, "Oh, my husband thinks this is going to be crazy, and we're going to have to live underground, and all this stuff." And we're just saying you're being hysterical, whatever. Long story short, within 2 months, we were working from home. Things just stopped, and we felt like almost we were living in prison, being in home, being in our houses.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and that's when you just started to see people complying. And I was just like, look, okay, if we comply, it'll be over, right? That was the beginning. And then I'm thinking, nah, this is going a bit weird because you started to see what was happening in other places.
Mhm.
Um, and as far as how it's impacted me, my business, the business has been fine. Um, but as an employee, it's been great. I mean, I seeing people that have lost jobs and pay. For me, I mean, it's almost like a 60 to 70% pay cut because what I
Wow.
do is I sell tickets for people to be in arena, right? And so
Mm.
obviously no one was allowed in arena, so I had no one to sell to, right? And so
Right.
it was heavy, it was tough. You know, pretty much not knowing when it was going to end, when were you going to get to you know have money in your pocket again so that you can live, right?
Right.
So
Right.
it's a lot of uncertainty, and you almost just keep wanting to wanted it to be over. You want it less death, you want it more health, and hopefully out of this people making more health conscious decisions um that can help us get out of this sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Yeah, for real. Yeah, the economic impact has been real. I mean, you know, yes, selling tickets for arenas. I'm also in the event industry,
Mhm.
and it's been catastrophic.
Oh yeah.
Because the first thing that happened is that every event was just shut down.
Yeah.
And that started happening in Bermuda anyway
Yeah.
in March, just when you start to get into the spring season, just when it's like the start of like all the big events happening. So when we look back, it's been since 2019 since we have had any real business.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I go I look at my warehouse sometimes, I want to cry because you still have to pay warehouse rent, you got all this
Right.
equipment sitting in there and it's just not getting used. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
the economic impact has been real,
Oh, it's been
but
heavy. It's been heavy. And I know at a time people were saying, it almost seemed like economy versus health, and it should have never been that.
Mhm.
It should have never
Right.
been that. And I guess we'll get into the divisiveness and how people have taken sides on certain things, but it should have never been that. And I feel like
Right.
when we got to those spaces, we're losing focus of um, what the actual purpose of this all this is.
Right. Yeah, for real. So a little bit about you're in America. So what has been the social impact in the US?
Um, from where I sit, I'm in South Florida, and Florida's an interesting state because it's a state that I like to say it's a lawless state. It's a state that pretty much maintain freedom. They
Right.
kept saying freedom. we're not gonna, right now there's a big thing where the governor said no mask on children during school, and then on Friday a judge overruled him saying that children can wear them. I think it's become political here, and so the social impact. While I don't have anything in front of me to say exactly what it is, the people in the lower end jobs have been impacted. They've been impacted. You look at the companies that have grown, and billionaires have kept getting rich, right? They've grown. You've seen their wealth grow during the pandemic. But people at the lower end that maybe worked in events or restaurants, which hospitality, which has been hard hit. I could only imagine what it's going to look like years from now, right? Also, there are jobs that right now you go somewhere in the U.S. Let's say you want to go to a fast food chain, or you're driving across. All you see is we're hiring, we're hiring, we're hiring. Some people say that that's because the government is paying people. Other people say no, it's not because the government are paying people. It's because these companies have never paid or treated their employees well. So the answer shouldn't be tell government stop paying. It should be, take care of your people and pay them better. So you've seen the impact from that standpoint. Where what does it mean? Does it mean that my colleague said to me the other day, "Oh, I want to go to a sandwich shop to get some sandwiches for lunch," right? So I said, "Nah, I'm not eating bread." So she's like, "Well," I said, "You know what? Let's go." She looked online, currently closed because we don't have enough staff. I mean,
very interesting.
Yeah, it's yeah,
Very interesting. Yeah. So how have people been able to explain that? You're saying that in spite of the fact that people haven't had employment, these places are suffering because of the way they've handled their staff. That's the
you've got people. Well, some people believe it's because of the policy by the government, which is give people unemployment extended, right? Because service industry is shut down. Then you have others that are saying no. I mean, it's not that. People have shifted industry. So people who may have been in service industry may have shifted to a new industry, and maybe the pay is better and they've gotten better opportunities and they haven't returned, right? So people have shifted. I don't think it's necessarily, again, we don't have the statistics yet to say where those people are, but it's a breakdown. It's a breakdown. It's a breakdown somewhere along the way. And this is another result of what the pandemic has brought about in the service industry and the restaurant industry and just employment period.
Right. Okay. So what's your understanding of the social impact in Bermuda, and how do you feel it compares with what you're experiencing in the US?
Bermuda's interesting. Having been there last week, seeing things firsthand. It's interesting, Eugene, because all I see every day are opinions being shared on social media, opinions on both sides, and opinions shared based on what people want to be true, what people want to believe, not necessarily what is or what's true. And as far as the social impact, I think, again, this without having the necessary information to have a fact-based opinion, I feel like socially we've become more divided. I think when you talk about social impact, some people know me from Bermudians Against the Draft, for instance, right? That was a learning experience, and my advice to anyone on either side of this is the person that you're arguing with isn't necessarily the person you need to be focused on. One of the things we probably got wrong with our fight with Bermudians Against the Draft is really trying to convince idiots, and I'm not being shy about that. We were trying to convince stupid people, fools, right? And you can't convince a wall to walk, right? And let's be honest, some people are legit just like walls. So instead of focusing on trying to change people's minds, focus on the people who actually are making the decisions, and don't get distracted.
Right.
And this goes for people on both sides. So the social impact, I think right now it's really too early to tell what it will be. But I will say I think the divisiveness is actually going to be long term.
Yeah, that is a concern. I had someone tell me they figured that if all of this stopped today, it may take 5 years or more to mend a lot of the relationships that's been damaged. So it really has been sad seeing the divisiveness. I just had a conversation today with someone who was talking about their mother, and she's decided not to take the jab, and she had a friend who called her, has been a friend of hers for over 40 years, and who pretty much was like totally upset with her. I'm disappointed in you and things of that nature. And now, as a result, like, they're not talking. A friend she's had for over 40 years, because in her view, she's totally irresponsible. You see what I mean? For deciding not to take the jab. So that was my next thing. You kind of led right into it. Like, this whole divisiveness and the arguments and things of that nature. Like, how do you feel about how all that's evolved? And
one of the things I try to do, Eugene, is I really try to understand people, and I try to understand their positions. It's too easy to share an opinion. Anybody can share an opinion. Like, you legit, anyone who can speak has an opinion, and they can share it. I think what we've done, we're living in a time where we put so much value on trying to respect the fact that people have opinions. And I think that's one of our biggest mistakes. We have to accept that some people are stupid. I'm not, that's just the reality. And they're not stupid because you disagree with them or they have a different perspective. But when I say some people are stupid, you can legit say, hey, it's raining outside. And someone will say, well, I don't feel it. It's not. Do not waste your time with those people. Stop trying to convince people of your reality and your truth. When it comes to an incident like that, right? I'm not interested in telling people. Look, I don't consider myself an expert at anything, right? But I'm not in the business of telling people what to do with their lives, their bodies. I'm not. We can have a conversation about it. I love to have conversations that make people think. But if someone doesn't want to take the vaccine, they're not an idiot. They're not stupid. That's their position. Now, if that person doesn't want to take the vaccine and then they start calling me names and I'm this and that because I chose to get it, then I feel like, well, that's just a stupid person, because instead of holding their position, believing their position, they want to come at me and say I'm this and that, a lab rat or whatever. Vice versa. Someone who takes the vaccine and thinks everyone else is ridiculous and they're causing this problem. Look, Eugene, let me be very clear. If you chose to take the vaccine, more power to you. If you believe that taking the vaccine is helping you and your family, it's protecting you and your family, so be it. But I said on the Daily Hour this past Friday, and I stand by this, I think people who are against taking the vaccine, I think people who are standing up firm and hard actually have stronger points than many things we've seen in our lifetime. What do I mean by that? When was the last time you've seen governments care about the health of its people the way they seem to care right now?
I'm sorry for laughing. You're absolutely right.
Seriously. And a second point is, we have people, our loved ones, who have been dying of sickness, have been sick, and their medications are thousands of dollars, tens of thousands. And then all of a sudden, a vaccine that's good for us is free. So I say that because, yes, I completely understand people who have questions. I have this thing I live by: question everything, fear nothing. Fear nothing. And don't be afraid to question. And so, it puzzles me that we spend so much time focusing on calling this person this or calling that person that because they don't agree with us. And to me, it takes away from us being focused on the decision makers. It really does. You know, one of the things with Bermudians Against the Draft, we were focused on the decision makers. We
Right.
were focused on them, right?
Mhm.
And although we got distracted at times and we got caught out in arguments with, you know, people who really didn't make a difference, we never lost focus on the decision makers, because
Right.
it's the decision makers who you have to make feel uncomfortable in order for them to do what you believe is right. And let me just say this here, right? Because one of the things that really used to bother me is when people try to use the majority or democracy as an example of doing the right thing. Folks, it don't matter if you're the majority or not. Right and wrong is not determined by how many people agree with you.
Mm. Mm.
So if you believe in your cause, you keep going. It don't matter if it's 100 people against you and 2 people with you. It's not right and wrong is not a numbers game.
Right. Right. Yeah. And sometimes it's difficult to converse with people about that because we've really gotten into this thing around democracy.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so, and yes, democracy is about everyone being able to give
Mhm,
input into decisions and things of that nature. And it's understandable. You go with the majority.
mhm,
You know what I mean? But you're absolutely correct. Just because more people agree with something, it doesn't necessarily mean that
mhm,
is the wisest thing to do in
mhm.
that time. And that's where leadership comes in.
Yeah.
And leaders are meant to be discerning, to be able to listen, to really understand, to have foresight and vision, and be
Mhm.
able to say, you know what, I'm going to make this call
Yeah.
because after listening to everything and taking everything in, I feel that this is ultimately in the best interest of the people, and you make the call,
Yeah.
and you go with it. But time will tell with a lot of these things because
Yep.
it's so many things that have been different
Yeah.
about this pandemic and the way it's been handled. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure if everybody's noticed that, but I want to ask you a bit about money
Mhm.
because I've had several people say to me, follow the money. and then you can actually understand why things are happening the way that they're happening, because there's been so many strange things that have been going on. So, do you feel that money has played a role in the decisions that have been made around the pandemic? And, if so, like how, like what comes to mind for you?
So it was last October or November on the Daily Hour when we kind of broke the story about ResQuest, and
Mm,
we asked some questions, and I think um, MP Dunkley in the One Bermuda Alliance then asked some questions in the House,
mhm.
and we didn't really get answers as far as our questions. But what I want to say about this is sometimes it does come across like this is as much about money um, as it is about health, as they say, or safety. What do I
Mhm.
mean? Let's go a bit deeper. What's been the most hard hit industry in Bermuda? The hospitality, right?
Mhm.
Tourism, we would say, restaurants. Well, when they implemented this thing where they were basically saying that, was it unvaccinated people? I'm not sure, but people had to spend 14 days in a hotel and they had to, cover the cost themselves.
Right. Yeah. Mandatory hotel
Yeah,
quarantine. Yes.
that right there stunk to me. That I think even if you supported the government, if you could be a diehard member of the political party that's in government, there's no way that should have been okay to you. Seriously.
Mm, mm,
Because what it seemed like and what it comes across as is this government under the leadership of David Burt honestly comes across as the UBP government. It's all about taking care of the business community first, even at the expense of the people.
mm,
That's what it came across to me as. And it's fascinating to see who agrees with the premier and his government. People talk about an opposition. Well, you can't have an opposition when the opposition seems to agree with a lot of the stuff that they do. Right?
Exactly.
So when you ask me about money, I feel like that was a move to say, we've got you, hoteliers. We'll get some people through your doors. Yeah, there's the argument that, well, look, some people messed it up. We can't trust people because they're not staying home, and we don't have the resources with the regiment and police to police people, right? Okay, fair point. For 14 days, when you start adding up the totals, that's not how a progressive party governs a country.
Right.
That's not, you don't break people who have already been broken financially already. And when I think about it, some people would say, oh, well, if you can't afford it while you're traveling, there are people that are coming back from school. There are people who have been away from medical. Not like that any of that should matter, right? But it just came across so cold and so callous that it seemed as if we were looking out for people with money more than the people of Bermuda.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I know I've made statements publicly to ask the question, like, who actually agrees with this? Like, how is this actually happening? And if you agree with it, I throw out the challenge a number of times. If you actually agree with it, then please, I really would like to understand, the merits. Please explain the merits. It's very difficult, but you brought up another point here. Why are so many members of parliament quiet? And this whole thing, you alluded to it already, the government and the opposition being in agreement. And it's not even just in Bermuda. It's almost like, how does this happen?
Well, if you look at the US, right? In the beginning, the Republicans, many of them, even the Republican-driven media, were speaking up against the vaccine and the shutdowns. Many of them still speaking up against masks and shutdowns. But all of a sudden, they changed their tone as it relates to the vaccine. Why are so many members of parliament quiet? This is the most brutally honest answer. Take away the 6 from the OBA. The most brutally honest answer for the Bermuda Progressive Labor Party is because the truth is that's their bread and butter. That's their bread and butter.
Yeah.
They need it. They need politics.
Right.
To be able to feed themselves. They need politics to be able to, make a living. This is what we have, and this is something that should really open the eyes of the people of Bermuda. Politics shouldn't be a place that people go for jobs, for money, to make a living, because when that happens, this is the result. They stay in place. They don't speak out. They don't represent the people.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a very valid point, because when you scale it all back and you say, okay, what is the job? The job is to represent the interests of your constituents. And then we find ourselves in a situation, again, where private interests or personal interests supersedes that. So if ultimately you are making decisions based on what's in your personal interest, then what purpose do you serve to your constituents? And if the job is to represent the interests of your constituents, then who cares what you think or how you feel?
Correct.
Or who cares about your job or how because your constituents are saying, well, you don't care about my job and how I'm making a living and my family and how, so why should I care about you? And then if that is the job, who then holds them accountable? Because in the midst of this, right, the understanding is that members of parliament continue to get paid every month.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who holds them accountable for that?
Yeah. And it's tough, Eugene, because I think, like I said, I think people who oppose the vaccine and the way the government's handled the pandemic, they have very valid arguments. Like that, it's not like, people are just opposing to oppose. I stated already, like, they have very valid arguments. You have certain governments who don't even want to ensure that their constituents have clean water, but all of a sudden people are supposed to believe that now you're promoting something about health that's in my best interest, you know?
Right.
So,
Right.
I think people are well within their rights to question. And right now, you should, look, this is what I had encouraged people to do. And I don't like giving advice, but instead of spending so much time arguing with people on social media or at family gatherings, go knock on your politician's door. Bermuda's small. They come knocking on your door. So go knock on their door, tell them you want to sit down on their couch and have a chat
Mm.
and share your concerns with them.
Yeah, definitely. So again, you're highlighting something that's starting to come up a bit more frequently in conversation, because I asked the question about who holds the members of parliament accountable
Mm.
if their duties are not being fulfilled.
Mm.
And ultimately it comes down to the people
Yeah.
of the country. So you're absolutely correct. When it's time for them, when they are in need of your support, they knock on your door.
Mhm.
Right? You may not see them again until the next election.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So now, more than ever, people are in need.
Mhm.
So your point about taking action is absolutely true, because what we've learned over this time is that, really there's no one else to save you.
Mhm.
You don't even have an opposition,
Mhm.
because it's like the government and the opposition got married at the beginning of the pandemic.
Mhm.
So where does that leave the people at the end of the day? And that's been a major concern. So you touched on something again about the media,
Mhm.
right? You
Mhm.
talked about the government pushing the narrative, and what we've seen all around the world is the media has just
Mhm.
jumped on board, So
Right.
how do you feel about the media? I mean, you're in the media industry, and what do you feel the role has been in all of this and how it's playing out?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. We actually spoke about this on Friday on the Daily Hour, like the role of the media, asking people what do they think the role of the media is. And the truth is, the media should be a place where you get information, right? It should be a place where you're getting information based on what is, not based on different perspectives. The truth is that, if you look at we shared a chart on Friday on the Daily Hour, right? The most left to the most right. Obviously, CNN most left, um, most right. You had Fox News and so on, right? But then you had some down the middles like Reuters and AP, right? The problem is, regardless of where people stand, they tend to believe the media that aligns with what they feel and what they want to believe, right? So, regardless of your position, you kind of take a position that, well, I saw this. Now, what's really disappointed me, I'm just going to be very honest. What's really disappointed me, especially in Black people at this time, is a lot of the media that I see brothers and sisters quoting right now is coming from the same media that last year was pretty much saying your life is not worthy. I'm speaking about the Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. Like that, the same people who were doing that, all of a sudden you're quoting them. We have to be careful. The media is what it is and what it's supposed to be are not one and the same. I'm not into news media. I am not. I am a part of a media where I have conversations. I'm not a journalist. I make that clear over and over and over. I don't report news. I discuss news. So even as discussing it, I give myself the opportunity to take a position once I get like for instance, I said on Friday, when I read an article, I actually do go on CNN. I'll go on Fox. I'll go on different websites to read the same story. Why? Because I like to see how things are being reported. How many people do that? On either side? They don't.
Right. Right.
But the media, folks, if you live and die by the media that is in front of us, you're doing yourself a disservice. We live in a time where we have so much access to information, Eugene, but all we do is access the information that aligns with our beliefs. And that's the disservice that we do.
Right. Yeah. Nobody wants to hear anyone challenging anything that they're saying. No one wants to take the time to understand. So, I was told one time that it's far better to understand than to be understood. That's a very profound statement.
Yeah.
And when you engage with that in mind, it has huge implications, right, on the process and the outcomes. Because you're actually interested in what the person's saying. Because to understand someone, you have to listen keenly.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time that understanding is not agreeing.
No.
You see what I mean? It's two totally distinct things. We can sit here and have a conversation right now, and I say, you know what, Jamel? I actually understand what you're saying. I get it.
But Eugene, I got the vaccine.
Right.
But I probably understand the people who are against it more than I do the people who are arguing for it. And so I make your point that you just made.
Right.
I make your point. I just said her about 10 minutes ago saying, no, I completely understand them. They make more sense because, again, and I'm going to repeat this. When has a government ever shown this much interest in the health of its people? And if something's so good for us, why is it free when we've seen people die for so many years? Because they can't afford healthcare to stay alive.
Yeah.
So I think the questions are genuine. I think people who disagree, I understand you. And I understand you because, Pastor Ronnie Smith, First Church I Go Up many years ago, passed away in the early of 2011, 2012, I believe. And I'll never forget when the Bermuda Regiment came to my job to arrest me because I did not want to conform to that racist institution of conscription. And he came to me some days later because he was pictured in the Royal Gazette as they were ushering me out of the radio station. And he said to me something to this effect, and I don't remember the exact quote, but I know I have it somewhere on Facebook years ago. And he basically said, Kamal, as he called me, he just never said Jamel for some reason. He said, Kamal, you know what? Many people who disagree with you have never and will never fight for anything in their lives. And, his point was that it's so easy to sit on this side, argue and disagree and this and that. But to actually fight, to go great lengths and stay, it's not about popularity and what the majority feel. But when you believe in your cause, right, you got to understand that a lot of people who don't respect your cause, don't care for your cause, these are likely people who have the privilege to benefit from causes like yours, but have never and will never fight for a cause like yours.
Well, yeah, it's a very interesting point because what I found in this situation is that it's causing us to face something that we haven't really had to face in a major way. And that is, what is our real position? Where do we stand? How do we really feel about it? And I'm not sure how many people have actually sat with that because generally we just follow the group thought. So it's like, oh, well, it seems like everybody else is doing this. So, I guess that's what we should do. And what we're finding in this situation is that the number of people who have lived through life in that fashion is large. It's a majority of people have generally followed the group thought.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, having independent thought is something that requires like a lot of strength and conviction, because you get challenged, you get isolated.
Oh yeah.
You get picked on. You start talking about the draft, and I believe I was up there at the regiment in the office discussing. I never went either. You know what I mean? And so, I remember my family being on my case. You're gonna get arrested.
Oh yeah.
You better go up there. You know what I mean? They're gonna come and take you off your job. And I said, you know what? So I called my friends. and those friends just happened to be, Mark Bean and David Chapman.
I know you guys' story, but please keep going.
So I said, you know what? I'm tired of hearing this from my family. We just need to go and address this, So, and I won't go on long about it, but I'll say that when we arrived at the regiment, all the way up until we got into the room, everybody was doing everything to push us back, to resist, to threaten us, to make us fear. When we got in the room, when we made one statement, they could see collectively we had so much conviction that they wanted us out of there as quickly as possible. And I was actually up there saying, well, hold on, I haven't even finished talking yet. Like, they just wanted us out because they knew that with our strength, the strength of our conviction, that we would actually influence other people. You know what I mean? And we actually did, because we walked out and found one of our friends and turned right around and walked back in with them and said, well, he's with us too. And he left. So I'm just saying that that's a rarity. And the thing that I'm hoping that people can get from even this conversation is that when you stand in your truth,
yes,
you see what I mean? When you follow your convictions, right? And you're committed to that, it has power. It has real power. And people respect that power. But you have to be willing to make the stand. Have confidence in it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's the thing that we feel, we need in the community. But
and I think, I remember hearing about you guys' case. And I think one thing I would say to anybody, regardless of where they stand on this, is you have to be willing to go the length. You have to be willing to, like, this. It's not easy. It's not easy, right? But, you're right to have questions. And as long as you have questions, you have to demand answers from the decision makers. Because I'll tell you this here, they will be on your doorstep in the next 3 to 4 years. They will be.
Yeah.
But it's time for you. And I'm speaking to the Bermudian people, regardless of how you feel about this. It's time for you to start showing up on their doorsteps and asking questions of them. Because the title of this show is Beyond the Pandemic. And honestly, I think we've been so distracted by arguing with our brothers and sisters that we don't even see what's about to hit us. And it's not pretty.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And it's very easy to get distracted, and you're correct about all the divisiveness. I mean, I was a part of a video that was released, and the Dark Cloud Unity of Strength video, and it's really like, we're fighting with each other, when in reality we should be coming together to address what's in front of us. Absolutely. You know what I mean? We need to find a way collectively to get beyond the pandemic. That's the real, focus. Yeah. So with that in mind, what suggestions do you have for the community to help us get beyond the pandemic? What comes to mind for you?
First thing would be is, as I've stated over and over so far, is people need to start having conversations directly with the people that come to have conversations with you. So one of them is, you know what? Go to the people that work for you. We have to start going to them. Now, there are people that say things like, oh, well, we're not doing it in person because it's a pandemic. there was a pandemic last year when an election was called and they were out. It's time for people to put more of an effort to get policies changed rather than minds. Stop focusing on changing your peers, your brothers and sisters' minds, and start focusing on changing the policies. And that can only happen when we be more direct with the people who are in charge of policies and legislation. So that's one solution. Another one is it's time to take our health in our own hands. It's time to take our health in our own hands. I'm not a health expert. I'm no doctor. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that your diet is the most important thing. Every individual is different. Everyone's different. Some people have hereditary things that are hereditary in their family. So we're all different. But if there was ever a time for us to take our health in our own hands, it's now. We have to start making better decisions. And that starts with what we eat. Every human being should find a half an hour to exercise daily. Go for a jog. Just put your phone down and go for a walk. Or we've got to take our health into our own hands. And another solution, I would say, I know everyone's not going to be out front and everyone's not going to fight and be loud and make their voice heard. I get that. But we have to be more courageous in sharing what we believe. Because if you keep your thoughts to yourself, you'll always get what's given and not what you deserve. I think dark days coming, Eugene. You know, I say that, you know, the pandemic to some people, it's a distraction. No, I think it's real. I think it's real. I think it has hurt us as a people. I believe there are people with who have lost their lives because of the sickness. I'm not going to sit here and act like it's not real. It's real. But we have to ask ourselves, is the response to it by the politicians the best that it could be? And I want to tell anyone who's involved in politics, anyone who is a part of the government, right? If you don't agree with what's going on, please, 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 for the sake of your constituents, don't just say something, do something. Your constituents deserve it.
Yeah, that's very powerful, very true. Very powerful and very true. All of the points. I mean, there's a really great suggestions. Be more direct. Speak with the people who are responsible for making policy. Go straight at them. Like you said, they come to your door every time before an election. They call on you for your support. Their job, right, is to represent your interests and to do things that are in your interests. So hold them to that. Take more responsibility for your health. Take it into your own hands.
Yeah.
We need to be more mindful. That's another thing. We got caught out on this. Because, as a country, as a community, we haven't really focused on health.
No.
Not in a real way. And so let us, although there have been challenges, this can be an opportunity for us to become more resilient and be far better prepared for the next time something like this comes around. And your third point about be more courageous. Make a stand, make your voices heard, ask questions.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Very important for us to do that. I was listening to an interview
Mhm.
um, just last week, and there was a gentleman on the interview, and he said, right, the only authority is the authority of our own conviction.
Mhm.
And he was like, we tend to give our authority away.
Mhm.
We give it to other people, you know. And he said, like those people, and it's speaking about the MPs, politicians, people in positions of authority,
Mhm.
you know, governments and things of that nature. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Right? They work for you.
Yeah.
You don't work for them, they work for
Mhm.
you. He made that point very clear. They work for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's very important for us to be able to understand that.
Mhm.
And as a people, we have to hold them accountable.
Indeed.
And fine, your final suggestion was about the MPs themselves.
Yeah.
You know,
Politicians.
yeah, the politicians. If you realize that your people are in need, if you see that people have genuine questions and concerns, you see people hurting,
Mhm.
that's the job.
Yeah.
Don't just talk about it, do something,
Mhm.
you know? And all of those things are very important. I mean, somehow we have to evolve. You made a point earlier about, you know, people being in public service and it's around pay.
Mhm.
It's a tricky situation because you say, okay, it's a big job. You need people to spend a whole time on it, so they need to be compensated some way. But now that's turned around to become a disservice.
Yep.
You know, we've paid people so well for the position that now the pay becomes an attraction.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And then the pay becomes something that has an impact on people's decisions.
Mhm.
Oh, well, maybe, I don't know. I don't want to speak out about that because if I lose my position, maybe the premier will shift and put
Mhm.
somebody else in my position, and that cuts my pay in half. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's a very challenging thing, but you
Mhm.
know, it would be good to find a way to have people be more independent in those positions
Indeed.
where they're not impacted by money and pay and things of that nature. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Yeah, that is enough. We have to worry about that in the community. Shouldn't be having to,
Yeah. Agreed.
and we shouldn't be concerned about money having an impact on whether somebody is serving our interests or not. You know?
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's sad that we live in a time where the people expected to represent us come across like they're trying to save their job more than they are save the people.
Mm,
It's crazy to me.
yeah. Yeah. For
Mhm.
real. Yeah, it is. And so somehow we have to find a way of bringing our country back together,
Mhm.
bringing the community back together. You know, this has been a very different experience. You made a point earlier about, you know, people who are now agreeing with people who before they were like totally against.
Yeah.
You know, and it's interesting because this has created like new dynamics socially.
Mhm. It
Because
has.
even I've talked to a lot of people who have never faced discrimination in their life before,
Mhm.
and now they're saying, "Wow, this is what discrimination actually feels like." I never knew. I honestly never knew what discrimination felt like. You know,
Yeah.
so yes, you are seeing alliances being formed by people who normally wouldn't be working together. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And you're seeing people impacted negatively who are normally protected by governments and authorities and things of that nature. So
Mhm.
there's all sorts of new dynamics coming out. You know what I mean? There are things that are unprecedented that are happening, and it's calling on us to come up with new solutions and ideas. You know, and in our view, the only way we're going to be able to do that is by working together. And that's why we've created this platform. Beyond the Pandemic is allowing the community to have conversations, to share insights, to share experiences, you know, to help us to find a way that we can all work together and contribute to something that's going to get beyond it, you know? So,
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. But one of the things that really I hope, and I can add this to there, is I wish the government would have done more to educate rather than market, promote, and pressure people.
mm,
And I say that because my hope is that the same way I asked, said that, I suggest people take their health into their own hands. I really wish that we would do a better job of educating ourselves as well.
Mm,
You know, and education doesn't mean going to school. It doesn't even mean just going online and finding things that align with your beliefs, but um, find just learning different things about it. Like, you know, we speak about. I see a lot of comparisons with the Tuskegee experiment. I see comparisons with the Spanish flu and smallpox and so many things. And but if I asked a lot of these people, well, tell me more about it, they wouldn't know beyond that one line,
mm,
right? So I would hope that people would educate themselves a bit more um,
mm.
on things that they feel strongly about, rather than just having opinions based on information they found that supports their position already.
Mm, mm. Yes, and yes, so we definitely need to do more research. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Because you're right. We tend to look for things that support the way we feel, and then we're in a hurry to share it
Yep.
and forward things around.
Mhm.
Try to go back and find the original sources. Make sure they're just sharing credible information and things of that nature. And I know a lot of people are, and I
Mhm.
know that that's the intention ultimately for most people.
Mhm.
But a lot of times you can find yourself caught up where it's like you send something out and they're like, oh man, that's actually not the truth. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the other thing is like, we have to find a way to get to the center
Yeah.
because at the moment we find ourselves at opposite extremes.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And I guess what I would say in following to what you've said is that it's also very important for us to be willing to engage in conversation. We have
Mhm.
to be willing to talk. We
Mhm.
have to be willing to listen. And then in that, let's find the common ground.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because that's going to be the only way that we're able to move forward. Like if you're pushing the jab and you don't want to hear anything else,
Mhm.
then you're just shutting down. It's no way to bring resolve. And on the other side, if you're totally against the jab and you don't even want to understand somebody who's supporting it or why they're supporting it, then you're not helping either to bring
Right.
us back into the center. And that's where we need to be able to get into the center. But
Yeah. Indeed.
and the media hasn't been helping
Mhm.
because there's so much information that is not getting to people,
Mhm.
and that's where what you're saying now requires so much more effort,
Mhm.
because before we just turn on the TV and it's
Mhm.
like, well, they're telling the truth, aren't they? They're telling us everything, right? The media is like our eyes and ears. And if
Well,
you're still living in that paradigm, then things have shifted.
and that's the thing. Like, one of the things I ensure we do with the Daily Hour, for instance, is we all have our positions, our opinions. But I like to engage with the audience. I like to engage with people, regardless of their perspectives. We've had you on. We've had Dr. Money Flood. We've had what's the doctor name? He did the we've had
Uh,
Dr. Trika Weldon,
oh,
Oscott. We've had Dr.
Oscar.
Oscott on. For me, it's really I love to hear from people,
Mm,
regardless of positions. I don't, I love a good debate. I love a good debate. I'm not gonna lie, but I what I love more than a good debate, honestly, is really just hearing not I don't want to just hear how people feel. I want
mm,
to hear why they feel the way they do.
mm, mm,
Because
mm,
why they feel that way or why they take such positions is honestly more important to me than how they feel, because it gives you a backstory and understanding as to
mm.
how they arrived to this point. In school, they used to always say, to get the answer right, you have to show your work. You have to do the work, right? Like, you can't just put the answer. You gotta, it's division, I think, or multiplication. You have to show
Mm,
all the work, how you got that.
right.
That's what I like. I don't just want to know, oh well, I'm against the vaccine. I want to understand why you against it. And once I start to hear and understand, it's helpful. It's like, you know what? I may not agree, but I
Mm,
completely understand this person's position. That's what we need more of, Eugene.
right. We just had a comment come in, and someone saying, I wish there was more opportunity for people to have conversations, like-minded people to come together, not just talk shows, you know? And yeah, I mean, I agree. We do need more opportunities for people to be able to come together and share, you know, but I'm actually thankful that we actually have talk shows that are talking about things now, because there was a point when you didn't even have that, you know. So I guess we're moving in kind of baby steps through this process.
I mean, in response to that, there's nothing stopping that individual or anyone from doing that, though.
Exactly.
You know, the same way how I went and started a talk show. And that's the other thing. Why are we always waiting on other people to do stuff for us? Go do it. Go do it. We you know, get out there. We legit have to get off our I can say asses, right? We need to get off our asses and legit, seriously, let's do something. But that's the other thing, Eugene. I think we may have spoke about it off air, but we have to stop waiting for other people to be our saviors. You know, I mean, a talk show is a great form of action, in my opinion. A great form of action, because it's getting the conversation going. But if you watch or listen to this entire conversation, what I've also encouraged is people to get into spaces with their politicians, the policymakers, the people who change the policy. That's what they need to do. Yeah, they can say, you know, oh, it's a pandemic. Well, when they called for an election last year, there was a pandemic as well.
Right.
Yeah. So, no, I look, man, I just feel like right now, people have got to feel more comfortable being who they are, believing what they believe, and fighting for it.
Right.
People,
yeah, it's very critical.
Let me just add this one more thing. We've always dismissed people who talk as just talkers. Like, where's the action? But folks, talking is a form of action. Without conversations, there's no plan or strategy, right? You know, talking is a form of action. If a plan and strategy comes out of it. Right. You know, Eugene asked me a question, what's my solutions? I'm not saying my solutions are the way out or they're perfect, but it's a starting point. It's a starting point, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so Jamel, this has been great. As I anticipated, we're already blown through an hour.
I tell you, half hour, and look at you, man.
Yeah. And I see the comments are coming in. People are saying at least a lot has changed since last year. And then it's like, yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Jamel. People saying thank you for sticking us for us. You see what I mean? The restaurants and gyms are suffering, and people don't come out to fight for their freedoms and their livelihood. So
let me say something to that, sister, real quick. I can relate. I can relate. And I'm going to tell her this. When you're fighting for stuff, there's going to be a lot of people in the background who will say nothing, do nothing. And that goes back to what Eugene asked me, solutions. When I ask people to be more courageous, right? It goes right back to that point. When we are fighting conscription, yeah, man, yeah. I support you guys, but hey, thanks for doing the work. You legit had guys that will not say nothing publicly because everyone's afraid to lose what they believe they have. Not what they have. Everyone's afraid to lose what they believe they have. So they don't want to risk upsetting the people who they think control their destiny. But the truth is, the people control the destiny of the politicians, not vice versa.
Right.
Never forget that. Never forget that. Because without you, they won't be employed. Most of them.
Right. And with that, I say thank you very much, Jamel. It's really been an enlightening and engaging conversation. I think the audience has really appreciated. The comments are still coming in, you know what I mean? So it's been very positive. Hopefully people have been inspired by the conversation and we can get more action, because we're definitely in a different paradigm. There's a huge shift going on. There's some term a great awakening is happening, where we're realizing that the way we have been doing things, you know, previously is not necessarily serving us right now. And as a result, it's calling upon us all as individuals to make changes, to make decisions, to take action in order to bring about the type of future that we all want to see. So thank you again, Jamel, for coming on today. Thank you for inspiring all our listeners, and hopefully we can have more conversation again in the future.
Much respect, my brother.
All right. Yeah, man. All right. Peace and love.